Wolves faring without Karl-Anthony Towns, and how much should we read into a victory over the flailing Warriors? Let's ask Jon Krawczynski those questions here on the Jon Krawczynski Show, part of TalkNorth.com. We're coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services studios. We want to thank Defined Destinations, TSR Injury Law, Head Flyer Brewing, and Shepherd Goods and Lamb Chops clothing line. Jon will ask a question related to Shepherd Goods and Lamb Chops clothing line at the end of the show. He'll also tell you more about the Defined Destinations trip he's taking with Wolves fans or anybody else who wants to go to Spain this summer. Go to defineddestinations.com and check that out. Jon's going to tell you more about that trip later. I highly recommend Defined Destinations. They've gone on a lot of trips with a lot of local journalists and celebrities. They always have a great time, so check that out. If you like this show or any show at TalkNorth.com, please subscribe to that show at your favorite podcast app. It's free. It's the easiest way to listen, and we do appreciate you listening. All right, Jon. The Wolves are hanging in there without Towns. How are they doing it, and should we read anything into that?
Well, I think, what we've seen so far is they have done a really good job of not letting the loss of their most consistent offensive player completely railroad their season. They are 6-3 without him. And then you look at some of those losses. So they lost to Cleveland in overtime without him. They lost to Denver at the very end of the game without Towns, Rudy Gobert, and Naz Reid on the second night of a back-to-back. They lost to the Lakers without Rudy Gobert as well. So the three losses have all either been very close or very injury dependent. And so I think that when you look at how they fared in these 9 games, you have to feel really good about it. And what you are seeing is a team that has adapted a little bit to a different style of play in terms of they knew that they were going to have to find a way to make up for the loss of Towns' shooting. This was not a high volume 3-point shooting team when Towns was in the lineup. And so you take out the most prolific 3-point shooter on the team, that's going to be a problem. But what they've done is just really leaned into ball movement. They've gotten out in transition a little bit more. They are creating great shots for each other. Anthony Edwards has been really good as a playmaker. And so that has all allowed them to really just settle in from an offensive standpoint and make sure that they did not fall off a cliff offensively without him. Should we read too much into it? No, because I still think that they really need Karl-Anthony Towns to win playoff series and to go deep in the playoffs. But certainly the way that they have rallied with Anthony Edwards, with not just with everyone kind of chipping in, it's been as probably about as good as you could have hoped for, and kind of inspirational with just the way that they're scrapping and clawing and being resourceful and figuring out ways to win these games.
He's Jon Krawczynski from The Athletic. I'm Jim Souhan from Star Tribune. Brandon Morton is our longtime producer. Little side note here. I was at the game Friday night. We're both at both games this weekend. And I just thought that the atmosphere on Sunday night, because of the opponent and Curry and Draymond and the high stakes, was fantastic. But I'm just completely charmed by the whole Naz Reid story. And I never thought I would live in a world where this sentence was possible. Naz Reid towel night.
And I mean, honestly, Jim, like,
it was fantastic.
Of all of the giveaways this team has done over the years to like try and drum up fan interest, that is right at the top of the list. I mean, you look at the visual of 15,000 beach towels waving in the stands with with Nas, the rapper's music playing in the background, and Naz Reid raining threes. Like, it's incredible what has happened. I tell you this story. We were on the road in LA, and it was before the game, and Jalen Clark, who is the Wolves rookie who has not played this season, just kind of chopping it up in the locker room, just chatting and stuff. And Nas was in there, and kind of the guys were all talking, and Jalen said to Nas, like, bro, you can't ever leave Minnesota. Like, you just can't. Like, you run that place, and that's what it is. It is a love affair that is dyed in the wool here, and I think the most the reason that it burns so hot is that it has been reciprocated. Like Naz Reid, the fans invested in Naz Reid, in this kind of doughy lump of clay who came undrafted 5 years ago, and Nas has rewarded that investment over and over again by his commitment to getting himself better, to improving his game, but then also to staying in Minnesota and taking it so personally. It's one of the really cool NBA stories across the league. Is just the way that the bond has been formed between Naz Reid and the Minnesota fan base. And man, what a time for him to come through right now with Towns out. Every night he's coming out and he's hitting shots. He's getting to the basket. Now he's rebounding the ball really well in place of Karl Anthony Towns. He's giving the Timberwolves and the fan base literally everything he has to make sure that they stay in the hunt for that number one overall seed.
Yeah, it's just great stuff. And another moment before we get back to broader topics. How about the way the players on Sunday night were raving about Mike and Nori predicting what the Warriors are going to run on the last play?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because Mike and Nori has become known locally as this very kind of funny halftime interview coach who gives these unbelievable one-liners that just make you laugh, make you shake your head, and he just kind of speaks the truth. But I think what we learned about the players and their connection to Mike and Nori after the game on Sunday night was that he's obviously much more than just a quick-witted guy who thinks quickly on his feet and has these funny one-liners. He's really, really smart. He scouts and works incredibly hard. Chris Finch brought him in here because he trusts him implicitly, both with lineups, with scouting, with all sorts of the ins and outs of coaching that you need in a long season. And I think that when Micah Nori told the Timberwolves what play the Golden State Warriors were going to run on that last possession, and then they ran it, that only further cemented the authority that he's going to have going forward with this group. This whole coaching staff, from Finch to Nori to Pablo Prigioni and Kevin Hansen and Elston Turner and Chris Hines and everyone involved in this whole group, I think has really done a great job of showing the players that they put the work in and that they're going to do everything they can to put them in the best position to succeed. And so Micah doing that, and then the players showing him appreciation in the locker room afterwards, shouting him out, making sure everyone knew that he was the one that saw that coming. What a great moment in a season full of great moments here.
No doubt about it. The other thing, and this isn't new, but just something I occasionally get to see myself. I do also find it really endearing that all the assistant coaches line up outside the locker room and treat Chris Finch like he's a star being introduced behind the scenes.
It's really funny. Jace Frederick wrote a great story about it at the start of the season. It's so great because that is exactly what Chris Finch does not want to do.
Yeah.
Like he does not want all the pomp and circumstance. He is not a guy who kind of like has fun that way. I mean, he's a laid back guy. He's good that way, but when it comes to the game time, he has his game face on and he's not messing around. And the way that that whole staff does it, Moses Ehambe, and we've had him on the show here. He's kind of the vibes coach. And he obviously does a lot of player development, does a lot of great work with the players, but his sort of spirit and his energy, I think, really does sort of take over that moment, and they get into it with Finch and they kind of chest bump him and hype him up, and he kind of just goes through the line and shakes his head and gets out there. But I do think it's good for Finch because he is wound really tight. Like he's dug in, like all NBA head coaches are, into the moment. And I think that usually lets him kind of relax for just a second. And I think that's important. So the chemistry wise, from the staff, from the top of the snake all the way down. Um, it's as tight a group and as as well connected a group as I've been around covering this team in 20 years. Like they really get along. The winning helps absolutely, but they really get along well. There's no kind of individual agendas, and they root for each other. And Finch really does a good job of empowering all of them. Then none of those guys feel like they're just there to run errands, to do the nitty gritty, the little stuff. That he gives everyone responsibility, and I think that's really important in what for the chemistry of the group as a whole.
Well, let's talk about team cohesion, locker room cohesion. But first, tell us quickly about the Defined Destinations trip.
I can't wait to do this in August 22nd through 29th. DefinedDestinations.com. You go there and look for the Taste of Spain trip. You may have heard on this network, Michael Russo and Anthony LaPanta take trips with fans, with listeners. I'd love for you to join me in Spain. We're going to Madrid and Barcelona, two of the most exotic cities in the world. Going to be amazing trips, 4-star hotels in the hearts of both cities. We have some tour guides who will be there that will show us around to some of the best museums, some of the best sites to see. We have wine sangria tours. We have going to have some unbelievable dinners together. It's going to be an unforgettable trip. And the great part about it is we're going to do things as a group from time to time. We're going to be able to talk some sports while we're over there, spend some time together and see some great things. You're also going to have time to go out and explore on your own, do things individually, enjoy it with your family, with friends, with coworkers, whoever you want to bring with you. I really encourage it. I think it's going to be a great time. I can't wait to just kind of be over there with some familiar faces, but also in a land where I've never been. And I think that makes me really excited about seeing something that I've never done. I've always been a little bit nervous about making European trips and things like that, but to do it with a group, to do it with an unbelievable tour guides that the Defined Destinations people have for us, it's going to be fantastic. So once again, go to definedestinations.com for a taste of Spain, August 22nd through 29th, Madrid and Barcelona. It's going to be amazing.
Don't be nervous about going to Europe. Every European trip I've ever taken has been fantastic and made me want to live there. So go do it. I also want to thank our longest running sponsor, TSR Injury Law. You know the deal. The billboards are everywhere. Now, they're part of the Nas Reed phenomenon. Doesn't everybody want to be part of the Nas Reed phenomenon? 612-TSR-TIME is the number you call if you're ever injured and need an injury lawyer. Trust me, they will take great care of you. They're good people. They're good at what they do. They've gone from a one-room business into a massive, successful business because they win cases, and they will not charge you unless they win your case. And obviously, they win a lot of cases. So 612-TSR-TIME is all I need to remember. 612-TSR-TIME. One network note, really good interview at Dawn of Sports, Don Mitchell's show on the network with Paul Allen. We got really deep on how he came up from almost nothing, worked his way up through some grunt jobs to get where he is today. Also highly recommend the Twins podcast, Chin Music, with Roy Smalley and LaBelle Neal as the Twins season starts, the best baseball podcast in town. Check all that out at talknorth.com, and we do appreciate it. So you just talked about coaching cohesiveness. It really strikes me that, we're toward the end of the regular season here, and, you spend more time around them than I do, but when I've been around the team, it just feels like a very relaxed locker room with a lot of really, nice people who seem to like each other. It seems like the right vibe exists in that locker room.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's unique in terms of the makeup of the team. Every team has an asshole or two usually, and that's not a bad thing. Sometimes you need someone with an edge. Sometimes you need someone to kind of kick somebody in the butt, to bring a little surliness to and competitiveness to a game and to a season. And I just have not seen that in that locker room. They all get along incredibly well. They have personalities that could conflict. Look, we saw it last year with Kyle Anderson and Rudy Gobert. We've seen, you can see potential flame ups that can happen from time to time. But in general, the vibe of the locker room is one that they know that that this is a franchise that's been discounted forever. They know that there are few people outside of the local metro area that believe that this Timberwolves team can go deep into the playoffs, can get to the conference finals, could, get to the finals, things like that. And I think they've rallied around each other that way. Karl Anthony Towns is kind of one of the more ridiculed players in the league. Rudy Gobert, one of the more ridiculed players in the league. Naz Reid was overlooked. Mike Conley has, people have thought that he was over the hill. You can go up and down the roster. Nobody knew who Nickeil Alexander-Walker was before he got traded here. There's everyone has some kind of a story that they can really tell themselves, that I think puts some chips on their shoulders, but then unites them in that, and they stand up for each other that way. And I think that's just been sort of the connective tissue of this team, has been one of, hey, I might pick on my brother, but you're not going to pick on my brother, kind of thing. And so I think that sort of, togetherness has bred a lot of the success and has allowed them to overcome what we saw last year, which was just kind of a lot harder work to establish that chemistry. And it's a team that has a bunch of really good guys on it, and yet they are still very, very competitive, and they're really nasty defensively, and they get after you. So they straddle the fence in terms of being good to be around, and I think being good to each other, but also when it's time to ring the bell, they're ready to throw punches. And that's been a good trend for them all season long.
I want to talk about the seeding. Mike Conley and Tim Legler taking a random shot at Karl Anthony Towns. First, though, tell us about the Shepherd Goods and Lamb Chops clothing line, if I can say that.
If you go onto the Timberwolves Twitter and Instagram feeds from the game last night, pregame last night, you'll see Jordan McLaughlin walking in to the arena in the kind of the fashion runway with an super cool Lamb Chops Letterman's jacket. And so these guys at Shepherd Good and Lamb Chops Clothing have been putting out high quality, super stylish, casual wear for a long time now, and they've really upped their game this season. They have a collab with the Timberwolves that has been available at Target Center. I have worn their hoodies, their shorts. They are some of the most comfortable and highest quality comfort wear that you could ever imagine. You can, if you go to sglambchops.com, there's promo code of Jon K20, JONK20 for 20% off anything there. These guys support the Timberwolves. They have supported this podcast, and they make just really cool stuff that you'd love to be wearing in a Minnesota summer, sitting out on a patio somewhere having a drink. So I would say get behind the people that support us, people that support your favorite team. Go to sglambchops.com, Jon K20 for 20% off anything at Shepherd Goods. And at the end of this podcast, I will read out a Twitter question from a lucky fan, and the winner will get a free pair of shorts from Lamb Chops. So Jordan and Craig and all the guys at Lamb Chops, they do a great job, and we thank them for supporting our podcast and being there all the time.
No doubt. Still getting compliments on the work that John and Brandon did when we had Chris Finch at Head Flyer Brewing. It was a great night. What's going on at Head Flyer these days?
Yeah, Head Flyer, great time. It's tournament time. The playoffs are approaching, and that means it's crunch time season. And that's the collaboration that I have with the folks at Head Flyer on a citrus wheat beer that is super refreshing, very drinkable as the weather warms up. I know we're looking at some snow right now, but spring is right around the corner, and it's the perfect kind of beer to crack open on a nice warm day and watch some Timberwolves, watch the NCAA tournament, do all of those things. You can also not just get the crunch time at Head Flyer Brewing, which is in Northeast Minneapolis on Hennepin Avenue at their wonderful tap room. But you can also find it at local liquor stores. You can find it at Total Wines in the metro area, and they sell them in 4-pack cans. So anytime you're around, go to Certix in Northeast Minneapolis. They have them there as well. Stop in, grab a 4-pack of Crunch Time, grab 2 4-packs of Crunch Time, and have a good time with it. As we get a little bit closer to the playoffs, we are planning to have another live show leading into the playoffs, still working out some details on that. So keep your eyes open for it. But Head Flyer Brewing, Northeast Minneapolis, Crunch Time Beer. The coolest thing I've done is have a collaboration with those guys. It's a great beer, and I hope you can pick some up.
It's funny, John. I had conversations with a few different Timberwolves employees completely casually, and they all said the same thing, which is, God, I hope we get the number 1 seed, but I don't even know if the number 1 seed is what you want because nobody knows who you actually want to play in these playoffs.
Yeah, I've said it all season now as they've kind of built things up here. I mean, they are a team that can go to the finals. They can also lose in the first round, depending on your matchup. And I don't think they're alone there. I think maybe Denver is the only team that can't say that. I think Denver's going to win their first round series no matter what. But everyone else is sort of vulnerable to the wrong matchup, but also very dangerous in the right matchups. And so you look at the way that things are stacking up right now in the West. The Warriors, who the Timberwolves beat on Sunday night, they are in a dogfight for just the 10 seed. But then you look at right now, the play-in, Jim, is insane. It's the Kings, Mavericks, Lakers, and Warriors. If that would have been if the season ended today, that would be your 2 play-in: Kings versus the Mavericks, Lakers versus Warriors, and then it would go from there for the 7 and the 8 seeds. And so you could see a scenario where the Wolves got up to second and then have to play Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving in the first round. You could see them getting up to first and have to play LeBron James and Anthony Davis. That's the kind of thing that is potentially waiting for them. But they could also beat either one of those teams easily, or maybe they get the Suns if they slip a little bit. If the Wolves fall back a little bit, do they face the Pelicans? It's going to be an unbelievable playoffs, just with the matchups, with the star power, with everything that is involved in it. But I think that the way that the Wolves are playing, the confidence that they're rolling with, the way that Anthony Edwards has sort of really unlocked his entire game, not just the scoring, but the playmaking and everything else, they're really dangerous. And so they're going to go into, it looks like right now, barring some kind of collapse over the last 12 games, they're going to go into the first round with home court advantage, which is huge for them. And they might be as high as number 1. I think 3 is probably their floor right now. They're 4.5 ahead of the Clippers and 5 games ahead of the Pelicans for the 4 seed. So it feels like they're locked into one of those top 3 spots, which, there's going to be advantageous matchups for them potentially. And there's going to be some worrisome ones, but they've had such a good year that they should go in with confidence that they can beat anyone. But it will not be easy. There's no question about it. Looking for, that advancing out of the first round for just the second time in franchise history, they are going to have to earn it no matter who they play. And that's just the state of the union in the Western Conference right now.
No doubt. One of the feelings I came away with, really a confirmation of a previous feeling, is that Mike Conley is like one of the most mature athletes I think I've ever dealt with. What a great fit for this group.
It's amazing because, we've talked about it a lot with sort of everything that he brings as a quarterback, as a leader, as all of those things. But I think for me, what lately has really impressed me, Jim, is that it looked like there was a period of time in February where, and maybe even earlier in March at some points, where you're like, oh, is he hitting the wall? He's 36 years old, plenty of games kind of in single digits. He was scoreless against the Clippers in that loss at home back in, at the start of March. What's going on here? But, ever since, being pretty underwhelming in the loss to the Lakers in Los Angeles, he's been phenomenal 23 against the Clippers in the win, 25 against the Jazz in a win, 21 against Cleveland. He had 14 and 7 assists and 4 steals against the Warriors. And he has a knack for, even when he maybe starts a little slow, doesn't hit a few shots, doesn't get into a rhythm, he can find what the Timberwolves need from him in the fourth quarter and deliver it. Whether it's open shots and open threes that he needs to hit, whether it's getting to the basket, whether it's just making the simple pass to find open people, getting a steal, or even a couple of block shots he's had recently in some games. He just is a master at seeing exactly what is needed from him and what he is able to give, and then delivering that. So I think these last 6 games, 7 games have been really encouraging for the Wolves, because he has clearly kind of broken out of whatever little bit of a funk that he was in prior to that. And when he is scoring double digits, double figures, and dishing the ball like he's capable of, man, that Wolves offense really hums at a different level. And you can tell, Jim, like, he knows the end of his career is a lot closer than the start, and that this team right here has a real opportunity to do some special things. And so he is just gritting his teeth, fighting through whatever aches and pains, whatever fatigue that he has, and just giving them everything he's got. And he's just essential to what these guys are doing right now.
No doubt. Last topic for today. I just saw a random Tim Legler clip, and Tim's been a good NBA analyst for a long time, former player, smart player, breaks down things well, in X's and O's. And he was just talking about the Timberwolves, and he just went, yeah, but, and I'm paraphrasing here, I'm not going to get the exact wording right. It was something like, yeah, but nobody likes Karl-Anthony Towns on that team. It just struck me as so, unless he knows something that I don't know, which is possible, it just struck me as a really lazy, cheap shot that doesn't have any bearing on reality.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, because I love Legler. I think he's really smart. I think generally he sticks to the basketball analysis, and he's excellent at it. There's no one better at breaking down games and looking at what's working and what's not. And so I think a lot of times comments like that, Jim, are really, frankly, a lot of projection. Karl-Anthony Towns' personality rubs some people the wrong way. There are just, if you're kind of more of the old school ilk, who want your max players and your star players to be the quote unquote killers, to be, the super intense guys and things, Carl's not going to be your guy. He is kind of goofy. He says some corny stuff sometimes. He has, had his moments in games where he has melted down. And so that does turn people off. I understand that. But when you're around him, when you're in that locker room and you see how he interacts with teammates, you just know that it's not a case of anyone not liking him. I think that everyone looks at Carl and says, man, that guy has just a great heart. He wants to be loved. I mean, he wants to be a part of a team and wants it to be a family. And he's also incredibly, incredibly talented. And so he gets all of that going for him within a locker room with the people who are around him every day. I'm sure he annoys people in there from time to time, just like in a long season, Kyle Anderson might do that, or, Leonard Miller, anybody in the locker room can just kind of get under your skin every once in a while. And Cat, he has that corniness about him that can make you roll your eyes sometimes. But when you talk about a player who everyone in there understands they need him if they're going to make a big time run in the playoffs, that's cemented. Like that's part of it. And that kind of gets back to what we talked about at the start, where he is one of those players, and I think Rudy is the other one, where Timberwolves will allow themselves to make fun of those players, to kind of jab them, to even get in arguments with them, whatever. But if it's someone from the outside, if it's another player, if it's another coach, if it's an analyst, they're not standing for that. Like these are their guys, they're rolling together. and side by side. And I'm sure that they're going to be very excited to see Karl-Anthony Towns back, probably sometime that first round of the playoffs or so. And they know they need him if they want to beat Denver. They want to beat some of the other really good teams in the Western Conference and really make a run at this thing. We'll wrap it up here with the Lamb Chops trivia question that from my Twitter feed. I asked for Wolves questions, and this one goes to Lincoln Aurora, and he said, how overlooked is Gobert's value on offense? By my eye test, the ball movement looks much better when he's on the floor setting screens and drawing attention in the lane and against smaller teams. And it's a great point, Lincoln, because we have seen, and understandably so, we have seen Rudy Gobert get a ton of accolades this season for returning to the dominant defensive guy that he is. He is the heavy favorite for Defensive Player of the Year. And so he's, I would be shocked if he doesn't win that at this point, but he certainly is so impactful on that end of the floor. But one of the things that has become clearer and clearer as the season goes along is that he is also incredibly important to what they do offensively. Yes, he can be a little clumsy sometimes, or he can turn the ball over, or he doesn't shoot threes. He can miss a free throw here and there and things like that are not very aesthetically pleasing. But the screen setting that he does, the offensive rebounding that he brings to the table, and also I do think he is showing a little bit more of a skill set offensively this year, whether it's with his passing, whether it's with taking a couple of dribbles and kind of putting a little bit more pressure on a defense. Against the Warriors, he kind of took a dribble or two and exploded really through Draymond Green and scored at the rim. That's something that he hasn't done much in the past. So he is critical to what they do offensively. And don't take my word for it. Take Mike Conley's word for it. This is what Mike had to say after the game. He said, Rudy is the offense. For the most part, guys don't recognize that. But the gravity that he has from not even setting the screen, but rolling down the middle of the floor creates a 2-on-1 for us. And we've got to reward him when he gets his opportunities late in games and in post situations under the basket. So I think Rudy had 10 points of his 17 in the fourth quarter against the Warriors when the Timberwolves came back to win that game. But he can really be impactful that way. So Lincoln, thanks for your question. I will set up, watch your DMs on Twitter. I will put you in touch with the good folks at Lamb Chops who will get you your pair of shorts. And just a reminder, sglambchops.com, Jon K, JONK 20 for 20% off at Lamb Chops.
Good stuff as always, John. Thank you. You can also hear John on the Viking Update show. John and I have both been covering the Vikings for decades, and John grew up watching them. We give a writer's view of the Vikings. Check that out as well. Again, check out the Chin Music Show, Dawn of Sports. We do appreciate it. Coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services studios, for Jon Krawczynski and Brandon Morton, I'm Jim Suhan. Thanks for listening.